Okay. Lovely. Guys, I'm really excited about today's conversation. It's going to be enlightening for all of us. All right. So let's dive right in. The first thing, we kind of left off at a place where we were going over the backgrounds and the psychological histories of the 4 black teenagers and Bernie Goetz. So I want you guys to just take a minute, write down a few characteristics and details that Gladwell puts in the story about the black teenagers and about Bernie Goetz. Take a minute, sketch out a couple of details that he puts into the text to give us some background about Bernie Goetz and the 4 teenagers.
Is that pencil sharpener in here?
It is. It's over here.
Can I get a seminar sheet?
Yeah.
Just one right here.
Pass me that one.
All right, so give me some details. Let's start with the 4 black teenagers. What's some details about these guys?
He was acting reckless on the train.
Okay, we learned that at the very beginning. What do we know about their backgrounds?
They
You get that from 241.
they all had a history of blinding. They were all involved in something.
We were all in jail before.
Yeah.
Trying to say it.
She was taking the room.
I stole her. You stole her from. Thank you, Takia. Yes, they were criminals. They had criminal backgrounds. Right? They grew up. Where did they grow up?
New York.
Where in New York? Bottom of 241, guys. What? We just watched a movie. No, we can't. We watched the movie for 3 days.
But that was, the movie wasn't about this.
Yeah.
You're talking about a whole different thing right now.
I think we can draw some parallels.
Okay, because the boys from the movie, they was from Harlem.
The boys from the movie were from Harlem.
But the boys from the short story
Are from.
Charlie.
Did you read?
Yeah.
It says 14.
It'd be good to get like.
they from 14th Street.
They from
They from the real hood.
They're from Brooklyn.
It's written like really explicitly.
Manhattan.
Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island.
South Bronx.
Where say that at?
The bottom of page 241. They're all from Claremont Village. It says South Bronx.
It's 240, not 241.
240. Thank you.
Yeah. Because I remember that part.
Yes. They are from Claremont Village.
The worst part.
Pretty close to here.
It's like that.
It's one of the worst parts of the Bronx.
No, it's not.
Damn.
You for real?
At the time.
At that time, especially. I mean, still not like, you know, a playground, but it's
It's a park.
better than it was. Yeah. I don't think anywhere is as bad as it was in the 80s. I mean, there was in the 80s, like there was definitely neighborhoods like you really just like couldn't walk around at night. And I don't feel that way pretty like almost anywhere in the Bronx
You
now.
live in Kingsbridge.
Yeah, yeah, I live in Kingsbridge. I don't feel that. I don't like
You live in Kingsbridge? Yeah, bro. You bad.
Bonafide. Bronx strong. All right. So we know that they had criminal backgrounds. They ended up, actually, one of them ended up getting convicted of like all kinds of crazy crimes after this happened. These guys were criminals, right? That's what he's trying to say about them. And how does he characterize Bernie Getz?
He was like, he's just somebody looking for power.
No, he was
Looking
It's
for
like-
power?
it's like he-
Okay.
it was
at the
like-
bottom of page
But he was
Interesting
he was
interpretation.
mistreated a lot, like growing up or whatnot. So
At the
I
bottom
feel like
of
they
page
said
41.
like it was something for him to like look
Respect,
for
guys.
power and
Respect.
he just
One mic.
You're getting kind of close there, Orlando. I like that without even having a text.
At the bottom of page 241, it says, here in short was a man with an authority problem. With
Yeah.
a strong sense that the system wasn't working, who had been the recent target of humiliation. Lillian Rubin, whatever his well basically that's what they saying about him, so I just read it.
No, read that. Keep going and read that quote that she says. His biographer. He has a biographer. That's how famous this dude is now. Like somebody wrote a biography about him. Just to give you a sense of who he is.
That biographer writes that his choice to live on 14th Street could hardly have been an accident. For Bernie, she writes, there seems to be something seductive about the setting, precisely because of its deficits and discomforts.
Deficits and discomforts.
It provided him with the comprehension. Yo, shut up.
Orlando, man, disrespectful. Dude.
Just
Do that
the
again.
tough points.
You're done.
Just the tough points. Target for the rage that lives inside him. That's it? Okay.
Keep going.
By focusing it on the external world, he need not to deal with his internal one. He rails about the dirt, the noise, the drunks, the crime, the pushers, the junkies, and all with good reason. Death bullets, Rubin conclude Berg, aimed at targets that exhibit as much in his past as in the present.
Okay. Beautiful. Thank you, Tekia. What do you think she means by that? By that his bullets were aimed at targets that didn't exist now, but existed in the past. Chris.
He's aiming at things that
Yes.
Talking about Getzer. I'm not. That's the. I mean. Anyways, guys.
Get it together, guys.
basically he's like trying to attack experiences that happened to him and things that happened that did bad things to him in the past instead of like targeting those people. I feel like everything was just built up to that moment, so he just shot them because he had so much anger bothered him inside.
Right. This was a dude who was totally unstable, and he was kind of looking for a target for his rage. That's what he's talking
I
about.
don't know if they mentioned like the part where it said something in the story about him getting jumped by his house or something like that.
Yep.
And then they jumped his doorman, and then he requested like the city like a pistol permit or a gun permit.
Yep.
And they dubbed him, and then he just got one anyway.
Yep.
Because like that was like his. I felt like that like what I said before. Like that was his way of like taking advantage of his own like more power for himself.
I think that's a good interpretation. You agree?
He probably doesn't feel like the system is like completely on his side because with that quote that he just used, that they jumped his doorman, he asked for a gun. Whatever he probably feels like the system rejected him away, like they didn't give him a way to protect himself. So that's why he probably feels like, oh, that I'm gonna protect myself because the system is not gonna protect me.
Okay. Good. Okay. Now, then Gladwell goes on to, and he says, if you think of what happened on the number 2 train this way, as in the background it gets and these 4 teenagers, the shooting begins to feel inevitable. 4 hoodlums confront a man with apparent psychological problems. That the shooting took place on the subway seems incidental. Getz would have shot those 4 kids if he had been sitting in a Burger King. What do you guys think about that? You think it was inevitable? Do you think this would have happened anywhere?
Like, I feel
Like if they would have met in the park or something? Atlanta?
I feel like if he would have like, it doesn't even matter like if it was them, but like if he would have met up with another like rowdy crowd somewhere else, and they would have like, you know, got like rubbed him the wrong way, I feel like he would have done it. Cause like he got pushed around so much, it was like he was already at a breaking point. So it don't matter where it was or who it was.
It was inevitable. You think he was going to snap at
Yeah,
some
he was
point?
about to snap eventually.
But could it have happened anywhere?
No.
Was there something specific about the subway that maybe caused this to happen?
Yeah, ain't gonna say like the subways was already a hot mess.
Right.
And
Subways
people
were
had
already a
no
hot
choice.
mess, which we detailed yesterday.
I'm asking.
Yeah.
I don't think so, because like in the documentary we saw in Central Park 5, it was a group of boys just, they didn't just beat up on one person, they beat up on a whole bunch of people.
Right.
But what are you talking about?
I'm asking you a question, what you talking about?
Bro, they beat the girl, and they beat her up, and then they beat other people up.
Talking about
I'm talking about
The
the
mob.
Alright, so say that, cause you talking
I
about
did
He
say
said,
that.
you said that.
Okay, y'all said the rules so
Okay.
Yo, why are we so hostile?
I know, everyone's like on edge here. Come on, relax.
I never wrote to college.
Okay. Now, the rest of the paragraph, he starts talking about why this is how we usually think about crimes happening, right? We think about the psychological backgrounds of people. Can somebody pick us up from after Burger King? Because I really want to read through this paragraph. We're on 242. Go ahead, Orlando.
I don't even know what to read though.
For most of the formal explanations. This is where he's going to explain, just let me give a little preface here. This is where he's going to explain the traditional view of crime and why it happens. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, Jay said you wanna read.
Go ahead, Orlando, you got a great voice.
Most of the formal explanation used for criminal behavior follow along the same logic. Psychiatrists talk about criminals as people who stunted psychological development, people who have had pathological relationships with their parents, who lack adequate role models, and who lack adequate role models. There is a relatively new literature that talks about genes that may or may not dispose certain individuals to crime. On the popular side, there are endless numbers of books by conservatives talking about crime as consequence of moral failure of communities and schools and parents who no longer raise children with respect for right and wrong. All of those theories are essentially ways of saying that the criminal is a personality type and distinguished by an insensitivity to norms of normal societies. People with stunted psychological development don't understand how to conduct healthy relationships. People with genetic
Predispositions.
to violence fly off the handle when normal people keep their cool. People who aren't taught right from wrong are obviously oblivious to what is and what it is not appropriate, what is not appropriate behavior. People who grow up poorly, fatherless, and buffeted by racism don't have the same commitment to social norms as those who from healthy middle class homes. Bernie Getz and those 4 thugs on the subway were, in this sense, prisoners of their own dysfunctional growth.
Okay. What does he mean by that? Now remember, he's talking about this as the theory, the traditional theory of crime.
Frank.
What does it mean that they were prisoners of their own dysfunctional world? Jay, what do you think? What do you think? What?
What are you saying? I already told you I think yesterday.
Oh, we're moving forward here.
Forward the other day.
You can choose another street. What do you think, Eliani? What does Gladwell mean?
Yeah, what's the question?
What do you think, Genesis? What does he mean by they're prisoners of their own dysfunctional world? No? Mariella? What do you think?
I think that they're already put in like a bad situation. Like their surroundings are already negative, so then they just kind of like think that those are the only ways to act and live up to them.
Okay, good. What do you think, Josh? You agree with that? You disagree? You want to add
I
on?
agree. I think it relates back to Detroit. It was saying
Okay.
it's like they're a product of their society. So if that's how you're growing up, then that's the only way you're gonna live by. And like just like in Detroit, where kids come from bad places, they're only gonna get into bad things. So in New York in this time, kids are coming from bad places, and there was nowhere in life for them to go. They just gonna keep doing what they're doing, just committing crimes.
It's like
Going down the wrong
it's
path.
like the guy from that story. I forgot the story with the little girl that got shot.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
I forgot what they
from
said.
that.
It's
It
like
was like they said it was almost like a disease.
yeah,
And like how like how if you don't treat it, it's just not gonna get better.
Okay. Good. Good. Takia.
Well,
Add on to that?
Yeah, maybe the guys, they were living up to their names that people already call them. We don't know if they're thugs for sure, but since people already label black kids as like thugs or like, oh, if they're automatically thugs, then why not live up to the name? So act disrespectfully and stuff like that. So maybe that's what
They were living up to their own kind of like stereotypes
yeah.
or whatever. Okay, good, good. So this is kind of like the traditional theory of crime, right? He's saying, right here, this is kind of the main things. All of those theories are essentially ways of saying, all of those theories, I want you guys to underline this. All of those theories are essentially ways of saying that the criminal is a personality type. A personality type distinguished by the insensitivity to the norms of a normal society. All right? If you're a criminal, you're a criminal. That's it. If you have the personality of it, you have the background of it, you're going to commit crimes. Okay? That's the traditional theory of crime. So if we find out about the backgrounds of people, we're going to find out why crime happens. But Gladwell doesn't say that this tells us the whole story. And he says that an even bigger factor in why crime happens is the power of context. Okay? So, can somebody start reading for us in the next paragraph? Starting with, but what do broken windows and the power of context suggest? We got a reader? Okay, I'll read. Fine. Like pulling teeth here today. Come on, guys.
There's nobody
I
here.
feel
Yeah.
she wants to read.
We got a lot of people here. We got enough people that have a good
There's
conversation.
like 3 people.
All right, I'm gonna read. Okay, but what do broken windows and the power of context suggest? Exactly the opposite. They say that the criminal, far from being someone who acts for fundamental, intrinsic reasons, intrinsic is like something inside of you, and who lives in his own world, is actually someone acutely sensitive to his environment, who is alert to all kinds of cues, and who is prompted to commit crimes based on his perception of the world around him. That is an incredibly radical and in some sense unbelievable idea. there is an even more radical dimension. Behavior is a function of social context, but is a very strange kind of environmentalism. In the 1960s, liberals made a similar kind of argument, but when they talked about the importance of environment, they were talking about the importance of fundamental social factors. Crime, they said, was the result of social justice, of structural economic inequities, of unemployment, of racism, of decades of institutional and social neglect, so that if you wanted to stop crime, you had to undertake some fairly heroic steps. All right, we're going to stop right there. What was this, so this 1960s liberal theory, what does this remind us of from what we've read in the past? That crime is not a factor of personality, but more institutional problems. Where did we just read about this? Solaris? Where did we just read about
I'm
this?
sorry, what page are you on?
242. At the bottom.
What, say that again, Sonia?
Are you talking about
Detroit, yes, Iona Stanley Jones. That was Charlie LeDuc's main argument, was that because of the institutional breakdown, because they weren't locking up criminals and they weren't prosecuting them correctly, because the education system was completely falling apart, that was leading to people to commit crimes. All right? So, we have two theories now about why people commit crimes. You have the traditional theory that it's all about psychology, it's all about your personality. Some people, because of their backgrounds, because of their genes, whatever, don't realize what they're doing is wrong and they commit crimes. All right? That's one theory. The second theory is that because of institutional breakdowns in a society, people commit crimes. Like how Josh was saying earlier about the kind of contagious thing where if everyone's doing it and they're not locking people up and you're not getting prosecuted for it, then you're going to commit crimes.
So you saying that basically is people doing, on one side is people doing crimes because they just do it, or against people who do crimes because they have to?
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Those are two like traditional theories of crime. One you would call like the classic traditional theory, which is the psychological theory, the personality theory. The other one is the liberal theory, which is that because these institutions have failed people, then they are forced to commit crimes. Please write those down, because you will use those
First one, liberal.
on your quiz and in your essay.
You said
Yeah,
first
okay,
one,
what
liberal.
was
Can you repeat what you said?
Which
So-
one is which?
Much slower.
So two theories of crime that Gladwell is comparing the power of context to, which is his theory. One is the traditional theory, which is that criminals are just criminals because of their background, because of their personality. They don't realize what they're doing is wrong, so they commit crimes.
That's dumb, cause
That's
some
almost
people
like
commit
saying
crimes.
you were born one.
Yes.
And then the other one's basically
And is that
saying
right?
you just grew into it. 'Cause
So
you
that's
have to.
liberal.
Yes.
That which is liberal.
Yes.
No,
And
the
then the
second
first
one
one
is
is
liberal.
personal.
The first one is the traditional theory.
Traditional versus liberal.
And then the liberal theory is like, nah, everyone's born all right, you know? It's just because of the institutions that in society that you grow up in, these institutions are failing us, and so you're forced to commit crimes. See the difference there?
Yeah.
Okay. This is important because this is how he's comparing his theory to both of these theories. Okay. Then he goes on to say, but the power of context says that what really matters is little things. The power of context says that the showdown on the subway between Bernie Goetz and those 40 youths had very little to do, in the end, with the tangled psychological pathology of Goetz, and very little as well to do with the background and poverty of the 4 youths who accosted him, and everything to do with the message sent by the graffiti on the walls and the disorder at the turnstiles. The power of context says you don't have to solve the big problems to solve crime. You can prevent crime just by scrubbing off graffiti and arresting fare beaters. This is what I meant when I called the power of context a radical theory. Giuliani and Bratton, far from being conservatives as they are commonly identified, actually represent on the question of crime the most extreme liberal position imaginable. A position so extreme that it is almost impossible to accept. How can it be that what was going on in Bernie Goetz's head doesn't matter? And if it is really true that it doesn't matter, why is this fact so hard to believe? That's a question for you guys. How can it be that what is going on in Goetz's head doesn't matter when we're talking about the power?
243.
Talking 243, the end of 243, the end of the first paragraph on 243. How can it be that this is such a radical, unbelievable theory? What is it? What is it about this theory that seems unbelievable to us?
Because we usually think that in order to solve something, you go like directly to it and try to figure it out. But they're saying that whatever was going on in his head was indirectly caused by smaller things.
Very good. Very good, right?
It's like saying that, like, in order to solve a huge problem, you attack the little things first in order to get to the main goal. And what gets there is like, it's just a small portion of, it's almost like, what he did almost foreshadowed what happened in New York City in the coming decade, because that's when crime went down. Because that's when they realized that, oh yeah, this is really bad.
Yeah. So, Gladwell's theory is that this Goetz shooting was the tipping point. That was what his whole book was called. This is just one chapter in that whole book. The tipping point being that point when anything kind of was possible in this environment, in this context. The environment had gotten to the point where this seemed reasonable. Him shooting 4 people for basically like saying a couple things to him seemed reasonable to people, which is crazy because he shot people, right?
They tried to
We would never think that that was okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
$5 back then was wild bread.
You acting like that was way back.
Exactly.
It wasn't that.
It
It wasn't.
Like $5.
20 years ago.
That was not $5.
Joke, don't do it.
That happened in 87.
84.
That's when
It's 30, Jeff.
30 years.
That was when it reached its like, just height of craziness.
But that's when people started thinking that it was okay, like to shoot people.
Yeah. But his theory, his theory is the power of context and environment, right? So would Gladwell say that like this would have happened in a park or a Burger King? Would Gladwell say, like, based on the power of context, that this would happen like anywhere? Do you want to share, Chris? Yeah. Do you need to step out of the room for a second? All right. So what would he say? Could this have happened anywhere?
I'm John Stowe, could have.
What's that? No. Why?
Because train stations were where most of the crimes took place, whether it was big or small. So I feel like that was just like, I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like in a park it was less like things going on there than there were in the train station, so it was just bound to happen there.
Right. So
I think yes, I think it could have happened, especially with Goetz, because he's already angry, and if a person still is coming up to you trying to rob you, whether anywhere in a train or in a park, right, and you want to shoot him, you're gonna shoot him, because it doesn't matter just because he's trying to rob him on the train. If he was trying to rob him clearly in the park, he clearly would have shot all of them too, because he probably felt that he probably used them trying to rob me was like a way for me to shoot all of them. So like that's his argument probably. Like they were trying to rob me, so I have to shoot them anywhere.
yeah. Relating this back to Central Park 5.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like, adding on to what Takia said, even if let's put let's say like Getz was in like the Central Park 5 thing, right?
Yeah.
Like if he was to see himself, like if he was to like catch, like let's say they did it, catch them doing it, I feel like he would shoot them.
Okay, that's a great point. So Getz was in Central Park that night when like the wilding was happening.
Yeah.
Like, might he like popped off on that?
Yeah.
Nah, definitely.
Yeah. Because the environment was there for him, right? Everything was happening. It seemed like chaos and lawlessness, just like it was on that subway car on that day in 1984. It was the environment that allowed him to do that, and for it to seem reasonable for people, right? We know how people reacted after it happened. They all held him up as a big hero. And the jury didn't convict him of anything more serious than holding onto an unlicensed firearm. That was it.
So he went to jail just for having a gun out his head.
That was it. Yeah.
It's because he's white.
That was probably another factor, yeah, in terms of the environment at the time. Okay, so after this part, in sections 4 and 5, he goes through a bunch of other evidence that proves his power of context. Has anybody gotten through these that could talk about the experiments, or do we need to like go through them together as a team? Okay, we're just gonna read through this as a team through sections 4 and 5. All right, some people have gotten through this. So this is when he kind of drifts outside of New York City and he goes into a bunch of different experiments that have been done. So I'm gonna read through this first paragraph here, and then I'm gonna have you guys read through this experiment. All right. Elsewhere, I talked about 2 seemingly counterintuitive aspects of persuasion. This is in other parts of this book. He doesn't really talk about this here in the power context. One was the study that showed how people who watched Peter Jennings on ABC were more likely to vote Republican than people who watched either Tom Brokaw or Dan Rather, because in some unconscious way, Jennings was able to signal his affection for Republican candidates. The second study showed how people who were charismatic could, without saying anything and with the briefest of exposures, infect others with their emotions. The implications of those 2 studies go to the heart of the law of the few, because they suggest that what we think of as inner states, preferences, and emotions are actually powerfully and imperceptibly influenced by seemingly inconsequential personal influences, by a newscaster we watch for a few minutes a day, or by someone we sit next to in silence in a 2-minute experiment. The essence of the power of context is that the same thing is true for certain kinds of environments, that in ways that we don't necessarily appreciate, our inner states are the result of our outer circumstances. The field of psychology is rich with experiments that demonstrate this fact. Okay, then he goes through a bunch of experiments, and I think that you guys should read through this and get this, but for the sake of time, we are gonna skip forward to page 248. Okay. Can somebody start reading for me? Can I get a volunteer, please? I'll give you points. I'm throwing points out there. So Nares, yes.
Okay.
All right. This does not mean. Start with that. 248. Yeah.
This does not mean that our inner psychological states and personal histories are not important in explaining our behavior. An enormous percentage of those who engage in violent acts, for example, have some kind of psychiatric disorder, will come from deeply disturbed backgrounds. But there is a world of difference between being inclined towards violence and actually says that once you catch a criminal, you can try to help him get better. Give him post-act, put him in therapy, try to rehabilitate him. But there is a very little you can do to prevent crime from happening in the first place.
Okay, beautiful. Guys, put big stars, put a big circle around this paragraph. This is like gold and is going to help you guys a lot on your quiz and on your essay coming up. Okay, so what does he mean that, thinking about this in like the traditional theory of crime, this traditional way of thinking about crime, why does he say that this is the most passive and reactive of ideas about crime? Why are these passive and reactive? What do we mean by passive? What's passive mean?
Conservative. Like you just let it happen.
Like conservative, yeah, like not being active about it. Just letting it happen. That's a very good way to put it. Okay? And what does reactive, what does reactive mean?
Assertive.
Right.
You seen that?
I did not see it. But stop. Whatever it is. Reactive. What do we react to? What's reacting to something?
Just telling you.
Yeah, just in general. What does it mean to react to something? Yeah. Something happens and then you do something about it, right? You're reacting to what is happening to you. So what is he saying that these theories are passive and reactive? What do you guys think? Ariella? Ariel?
What you said?
That? Eliani?
Oh, so it's like,
Whatever.
so it's like, where he's saying that you can catch a criminal and try to help him get better. But I mean, thing like you're doing something about it when it comes to the reactive side. But you can help him get better. That's one person that you've done something like to like stop doing crime. But there's also other people that's always gonna keep doing crimes. So it's like the cycle never stops, and that's what the passive and reactive.
Thank you, Josh. Well done. Okay, and now, how is the power of context not passive and not reactive? How is the broken windows theory not passive and not reactive? How is it different from those other theories of crime? Why is it different? Why is it not passive? Why is it not reacting?
Can't you say that the power of context is reactive? It's technically doing something about it.
Okay, a little bit. I think you can make an argument for that. But how is it not the same as the other views of crime in terms of being reactive and passive? What do you think, Chris?
It's not directly facing the problem. It's
Okay.
facing the problem within other problems and smaller issues. So it's not really like, it's not really solving anything that has to do with the big.
What's the broken windows theories doing that's gonna be more aggressive or proactive about crime?
It's stopping people thinking about you doing it.
Okay, and how is it doing that?
You said that it's basically you stopping crime, you're doing something about it, and you too consistent with stopping crime, then people gonna go out, people gonna leave their houses knowing that crimes are not that likely to happen anymore. puts these criminals with the fear when they leave their house, with the fear that they know a consequence will come.
Very good. Very good. What are you changing in a big picture sense? What are you changing?
Changing the way people think.
Changing the way people think, and how are you doing that? How are you changing the way people think? Think about Bernie Getz. Think about the subway. Changing the environment. Thank you. That's the whole theory of the power of context. By changing little pieces of the environment, you change the context within which crime happens, and you prevent it from happening in the first place. It's a proactive way of combating crime. Okay. All right. That's good. All right. I think you guys will be all right. Hopefully we're all paying attention today. Tomorrow, reading quiz. You will have the entire period to do it. There won't be extra time unless you have it.
She was like, man,
2 different questions. Guys, you want to study. Start putting together answers for these 2 prompts at the bottom of your Socratic seminar sheet. Everything I'm collecting tomorrow. All right, please help me put the chairs back.
You know you're not going fast, so he's on shape. You try to be
so he came out. He wasn't supposed to come out. His son came out. No, yeah. He came out. Yeah.
Man.
What did he say? The man like a man. He said it 3 times. Oh my God. You gotta watch it. You know what I show you?
Nah, first year, we go to
That's right. Everybody.
Guys, have a good day. Finish reading.
No, I wouldn't.
International flashback and Terrence Howard, he grabbed him. I felt bad.
Nah, that's not 40. There's only 4 bills, but it's me,
Security has study hall on the line. And then there's 3 and then 3, yeah.